Talk to our audience about your areas of giving. What do you give for, and in some cases, why?
Yeah, so when I first joined U.S. Bank, it was in 2016, and one of my first tasks was to create a giving and engagement platform. And this is when U.S. Bank was going through an exercise of really trying to understand our purpose, our mission, and our core values. And at the time, our purpose was really about possibility. The way that I think about it is, we're banks. We're not here to tell you what to do with your money, but when you are here, when you're ready to buy your first home or buy your retirement home, when you're ready to put your first child through college or start an account to put your grandbaby through college, we want to make sure we're there to make that possible happen. So the idea was that our bank was about possibility. And when they hired me, they said, could you connect our giving and engagement strategy to this idea of possibility? So we used some external partners. I did a bunch of internal conversations. And at the time, the foundation was focused on this broad category of economic opportunity. And when I asked people inside the bank and out, what does that mean to you? I got 100 different definitions of economic opportunity. And so what we ended up doing was really saying, okay, what is it that we're good at the bank? What are our core competencies, and how do we bring those to life in community? We created a platform that we still have today that's called Community Possible. There's that connection back to possibility. It has 3 pillars: work, home, and play. Easy to remember. Most U.S. bankers can recite work, home, and play, and they know what it means. Within work, it's really about financial literacy, incredibly important to banks. It's about college and career readiness, and it's about small business development. If you think about any of those 3 things, they all make sense to the bank. That's our work pillar. Home is all about affordable housing. Should be music to the ears of many in this room. That is our core focus within the home pillar. Play is actually where we had a little bit of fun. I remember a couple of bankers, including our CEO, saying to me, play, bankers aren't always known for being the most playful people, but what play was really about was making sure that we were thinking about the arts and culture, and how do we make sure that all communities have the same access to arts and culture, because we know how important the arts and culture are to creativity, to overcoming divisiveness. So play has been a really, really fun area of focus for us as well. So those are our 3 areas of focus: work, home, and play, all connected back to what we do at the bank.
Wonderful. Darlene, tell us about your areas of giving.
Sure. So with the Wells Fargo Foundation and Philanthropy and Community Impact, back prior to 2019, we used to try to be all things to all people. We said we used to spread the peanut butter really thin. And if you looked at our giving, you would have thought we were an education foundation. And then we underwent a strategic planning exercise as well, and decided to center on 4 main focus areas with a mission of strengthening historically marginalized communities by investing in pathways to economic advancement and generational wealth. And those 4 focus areas are housing access and affordability, again, music to the ears of the folks in this room, financial health, small business growth, and sustainability. And we settled on those 4 pillars because, similar to you, it's something that we are good at as a bank. We can bring the full resources of our enterprise to bear, whether it's capital and financing through our commercial bank or our corporate investment bank, to our volunteers, and bringing skills-based expertise to bear. That's why we've decided to focus on those 4 areas, so that we can bring not only our philanthropic dollars, but the full resources of the bank to bear.
Darlene, just on a side note, you mentioned something that I think is really, really important for our nonprofit partners in here. And it's something that's really personal to you, something that you look at when you're thinking about working with us. Tell us about what you look at and what's really important to you.
So I'm a self-proclaimed data geek. So I actually started my career, so I'm an engineer by training, and I know engineering to philanthropy, it's a long story. But I started my career as a data scientist, so I used to build predictive risk models for banks and insurance companies, and I always looked at how data could be used to make better decisions. And so when I'm thinking about how we're giving out philanthropic dollars, I look at those as investments, and I want to understand what are the outcomes, what is the data telling us, where should we be directing our dollars to have the greatest impact. So there's really kind of the bucket of what are the proven programs and strategies out there that are demonstrated by real data where we can continue to invest. And then there's the second bucket that is really looking at innovation and disruptive strategies where we might be able to take greater risk from a philanthropic perspective and invest in those innovations, figure out what works, and then for those strategies that are successful, we can look at corporate and public investment dollars to really help scale.
Absolutely. Well, we certainly want to grow. We want you guys to grow so that we can grow. Data is king, as Darlene is saying. Reba, what are the focus areas for you there at U.S. Bank? And then I have another question once you tell us that. What are your focus areas?
The focus areas were the ones that I mentioned earlier, which are really these the focus on work, home, and play. But what I'd say is what differentiates us, because actually it's funny, Darlene, like I'm listening to you and I'm going, oh my God, I'm a data nerd too. Like you could have probably just had one of us and we could have represented both, because we are, I mean, really
Absolutely.
so aligned in the way that we're thinking and approaching the work. But you know, one of the things that that maybe differentiates us is that we really focus on listening to community and co-creating solutions with community. That's really important to us. So we walk into rooms not thinking we have all the answers, not thinking that we have all the data that we need, but really thinking about how do we listen and learn and co-create solutions. And I think, Marcia, you were a part of that in a recent commitment that U.S. Bank made, $100 billion, that's billion with a B, commitment to community over the next 5 years. It started in 2023, and it is a commitment that is focused on access to capital in low and moderate income communities, including communities of color. It is really focused on the business of banking. It is mortgages, it is small business loans, and it is community development, lending, and investment. And then there's other commitments around supplier diversity, philanthropy, et cetera. But the bulk of that $100 billion commitment is in those three buckets. And that plan was created in listening to community. Marcia was one of the community leaders who sat with us. We listened to over 208 community leaders in a series of listening sessions, took my CEO and our senior leadership team to every single one of those listening sessions. And what we heard was what partners like Marcia liked about financial services and liked about U.S. Bank, and what they didn't like about financial services and that they thought we could be doing better. And out of those conversations, we created this $100 billion commitment. So our focus areas are pretty consistent. How we approach the work, I think, sounds like it's actually pretty consistent in looking for data-driven, proven outcomes. One of the things we also focus on is making sure that we're listening to community and being responsive to those community needs.
I'm going to ask you another question, Reba. Tell us about, and I'd like for you to also answer this, Darlene. Tell us about a rewarding or inspiring project that you funded that you really, really felt very good about.
Sure, I can start. George Floyd was murdered just a couple miles from where we're sitting today. And U.S. Bank is headquartered in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. My office is just right down the street, I think about 2.7 miles from where Mr. Floyd was murdered. And the couple of days after that were a bit of a blur. I remember my CEO, Andy, who you've met, Marcia, calling and asking how I was. We immediately went out into community. Our branches were destroyed. We picked up glass. We spent a lot of time together as a team. We were doing food donation stations, and I don't know if I actually even went into the office because it was just all about being kind of immersed in community. And one of the first questions that my CEO asked when he called me was, what should we do? And there were a lot of companies that were making proclamations and commitments, and there were a lot of words. And what we said was, we want to make sure that we're actually like doing the work. And so when I got through the haze of a week or two, I sat with my team and I asked them, what are you hearing from nonprofit leaders? What do they need? Now, I'm a woman of action, and I had secured $30 million from our company in foundation funds, incremental funds, to do what was necessary. So I had $30 million, and I was asking my team, what does community need? And what we heard was that community needed to be rebuilt, that we needed to think about actual rebuilding efforts where there was destruction, not just in the Twin Cities community, but across the country as a result of the uprising. The other thing we heard about was the need for systems change, which is not new. We've been talking about it for a long time, but to think about how do we actually change systems so that they help people and don't hurt people. And the other thing that we heard about, which was a little thing, but it really stayed with me, was about the trauma that our community was experiencing over and over and over again. Not just that video, but the news stories, the cameras, the microphones being shoved in faces, asked about the experience, how they were feeling. And that really stayed with me. So we created this fund called the Rebuild and Transform Fund, and it was equally distributed between the rebuilding efforts and the systems change efforts. We found partners. We gave away millions of dollars in grants. And with every single grant, we offered the nonprofit an opportunity to receive or to use funds towards mental health support for their staff or their clients. It was such a little thing, but I had so many nonprofits, especially in this market, say to me, thank you so much for doing that. We were going through the motions. We were trying to serve our community, and we didn't care for ourselves as part of that experience. So that's just one example. And again, it all comes from listening to community and sometimes just taking a beat to say, I've got resources, but I want to make sure that I really understand what community needs. So that's something I'm really proud of.
Excellent. Darlene, how about you?
Well, I'll just build on it because we are so aligned. In the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, and I see my Minneapolis team here, Patty Pancook and Shonda Thomas, we also looked at what we could do with intention, listening to community. And one of the projects that I'm most proud of is Opportunity Crossing. So in that corridor where our branch was destroyed, there was just a lot of destruction. We listened to community, and we are able to play a lead role in Opportunity Crossing, which is a mixed income, mixed use project, a development project that's going to create 100 units of affordable housing, spaces for small businesses, a new branch, a community space. That wouldn't have come about without starting with the community-centered design. And to my earlier point, it really enabled us to bring the full breadth of the resources of the bank to bear. So not only our philanthropy, but our community lending and investment team, our corporate investment bank, our commercial bank, our corporate properties group, all coming together to ensure that the project had the capital and the financing necessary to become reality. And in June, we had the groundbreaking. I missed it, unfortunately, because I got COVID, but it was an amazing event to see the transformation that is to come in that space. And so that's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
Wonderful. Well, both of you are doing great works, not only in Minneapolis. Now, U.S. Bank and Wells Fargo, these are the two giants here in Minneapolis. Without question, they are nationwide and are doing things in your areas of the world. Darlene, I will start with you and then go to Reba. You know, everyone here has probably submitted a proposal to Wells Fargo and U.S. Bank. We want to know candidly, what do you measure? What do you measure when assessing performance of a nonprofit recipient? Okay, so someone's got money from you. I mean, how do you measure the performance and, and so you can say, well done, they did a great job, they'll be able to get some more money?
Well, so we do ask nonprofits when we're giving them a grant to set projected outcomes. So, and we have specific metrics that we capture for each of our 4 focus areas. So for housing, it may be number of affordable units created or number of homeowners created. For financial health, it might be the number of people who have increased savings by, X dollar amount, or the people who have reduced debt by so much, or who have established and improved their credit score. For small business, it might be around jobs created, jobs preserved, number of small businesses served. So we ask the nonprofits to make projections when they are completing their application. It's great to have those grounded in reality. And then we ask for impact reports periodically so that we can understand how is the nonprofit tracking to be able to meet those outcomes. So, data is important, but it's also the stories, right? We want to hear the stories of impact. We want to also hear about, the homeowner that was created out of the work that you all are doing. And so it's sort of a combination of that quantitative and qualitative.
Great, wonderful. How do you measure success for your nonprofits, Reba?
Same. Honestly, everything you just said is exactly what we do. I will share one additional thought, and I'm sure you're thinking about this, Darlene, which is, we're always thoughtful about how can we simplify the process, and then what do we do with the data? The question I always ask my team is, if you are asking the nonprofit for the data, make sure you are using the data to do something. So it's not just for the sake of having it in a report. That is my biggest frustration, is when we ask y'all for a bunch of information and then we do nothing with it. Analogous to, we once in our mortgage discovery experience at U.S. Bank went through and we looked at all of the questions we were asking to get to conditional approval of a mortgage. You've probably done this at Wells. And it was something like 78 questions we were asking, people to complete. Anyone who's done a mortgage knows it's not always an easy process. And when we actually peeled back the onion to say, to get to the first level of approval, not all the way to an approved mortgage, but the first level, conditional approval, how many questions do you really, really need to answer? It was something like 9. It was under 10. So we changed the process. We used agile methodology to say, okay, there's only 9 questions you need to answer to get to this stage, and then there's a couple more to get to the next stage. We're always looking at our outcomes measurement the same way. How do we simplify? How few questions can we ask? How consistent can we get those questions to be? I mean, I've always dreamt about this world where we have a set, as corporate funders, not just banks, but a set of outcomes that we all kind of align upon, and a set of questions so that you wouldn't have to answer different questions for Wells Fargo than you do for U.S. Bank. So when I retire, I'm going to go out and try to figure something like that out, because I think the focus is to make it as easy on you as possible, because your focus should be on delivering those outcomes that we want to see.
Great, great. That's why I told you guys we wanted you to meet 2 wonderful, wonderful ladies. Reba, let me just ask you, and I'd love for you to also answer this, Darlene. When you fund projects, do you guys want to be intricately involved, or do you want to just kind of let the organization go on and do whatever they want to do, or whatever they said that they were going to do? How involved do you all want to be? Reba, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, some of it depends on the level of grant making. I would say, first and foremost, we trust the nonprofits that we grant to, that you're going to do the things that you need to do. To Darlene's earlier point, if you're going to set outcomes and you're going to tell us this is what you're going to accomplish, we do not want to get in the way or tell you how to do what you do, because you know community better than we ever could. We are the funders, so we're very clear about our role in that relationship. And anytime that there's an opportunity for employee engagement, boy, do we love that. We love it when our employees can actually come out and be a part of our grant making. It makes it that much more real. And by the way, it connects you to more potential funders. The other thing that we always look for is board service opportunities. It is a great way for us to stretch our talent at the bank. I always say to really talented people at the bank, the way that you behave in the boardroom of U.S. Bank probably looks different than the way that you're going to behave in that nonprofit board room or when you're having a conversation as a member of the board. So it's a really good talent acquisition, talent retention strategy for us as well. So I would say we like to be involved, but not get in the way of you achieving the objectives that you're setting out in community.
Ditto.
Oh my God. Okay, this is good. This is good. Let me just ask you, Darlene, what do you want the Wells Fargo Foundation legacy to be? What do you want people to think and feel about the foundation?
So we've been having a lot of discussions about this lately. It comes back to community. We really want to see thriving communities where people have safe, affordable, quality places to call home, where businesses can thrive, where business owners can not only create wealth for their family, but for the community through job creation and job preservation, creating a real ripple effect in the economy, where people have not only financial stability, but financial security, wealth creation, wealth preservation, and wealth transfer, where we have resilient communities that can withstand the climate impacts that we are seeing today. We really want to see those thriving communities and thriving lives.
Great. Any thoughts from you, Reba?
I think that was really, it was really well said. I think for most of us who do this work, it is really about helping communities thrive. But I think what we need to make sure that we're relaying inside of our organizations is that business and community are incredibly interconnected. You can't have a thriving business without having a thriving community. So one of the things that we work on constantly, and I'm sure you're doing this too, Darlene, as you work to bring the whole bank to community, is to make sure that we're making the business case for why all this makes sense. I mean, if you don't know bankers, just know they are data-driven. It is about driving the business. So anytime we can connect the work that you're doing in community to helping our business grow, that is always a huge positive as well. And it's something that our Chief Diversity Officer, Greg Cunningham, who you're getting to know, and I do a lot of that. We sit on the managing committee of the organization. And when we sit at that table, that is what we're trying to convey, is this is not a separate entity of U.S. Bank. We're not over here doing this just out of the goodness of our hearts. This is part of our business strategy to make sure that communities thrive. It is part of our business transition or business strategy to finance the transition to a low carbon economy. It is part of our business strategy to make sure that our employees look like the customers they serve and understand their lived experience. So that would be the one ad I would have, is to make sure it's clear that we are doing this to help grow our business, and that is good for community.
Great. We're almost to an end with these wonderful ladies. Let me just ask you honestly, you all are so busy leading your companies, leading your foundations, doing, socially responsible things. How do you relax? I mean, how do you take it easy? Or do you? This is the question. Darlene, tell us about yourself.
I live on planes.
Now, when you're on a plane, what do you do? Do you sleep? Do you read? Do you prepare? What?
All of the above. I do. So one of the nice things with a digital transformation that we're undergoing is that a lot of our systems are online, and so if I don't connect to Wi-Fi, I can't access anything.
Yeah.
So it gives me a little bit of a break and some mental a headspace to just think and be. And so I've been watching a lot of movies on planes,
Okay.
listening to audibles, sleeping, trying to catch up with jet lag. But when I checked into this hotel, the guy at the front desk, so I landed at like 1:15 in the morning because my travel schedule is crazy. And he says, "You're 18 nights away from being ambassador elite." I thought, that's not a good thing. But when I am home, I love riding my Peloton. I'm a Peloton person, so I think I was at 782 rides on Sunday when I rode. So
For you.
yeah,
That's an achievement.
yeah.
Absolutely. How about you, Reba?
So I just wrote a blog about this, and Jill from my communications team is here, so this will sound familiar, and I'm going to try to make this really fast. But I have this theory, because we get asked a lot about work-life balance, right? How do you do it all? And the answer is, like, you don't. So my theory is that work-life balance is kind of a myth at any given point. So in any given day, week, month, year, you are out of balance. But I wrote this really simple, I drew this simple visual. At the center of it is you. And put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. Peloton, I actually have diagnosed anxiety, so I work out 6 days a week. I have to, or my anxiety is out of control. I get massages. I am unapologetic about spending time with my girlfriends. We do mimosas Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. And that's just, it's okay. Like, don't apologize. You don't have to apologize for taking care of yourself, because if you don't take care of you, none of the rest of it works. And then the other 3 points of the triangle that I think, with you in the center, is your career, your family, and your community or your faith. For a lot of people, that's their faith. And I think what you want over the span of your life is to look back and say, I took care of myself. I had a job that gave me a purpose and that I felt good about. I supported my community and my faith, and I was there for my family. So I think if you look at it in a point in time, you'll always be off balance. But if you look at it over time, hopefully you find the balance you're looking for.
Excellent. As we conclude, ladies, give us some words of wisdom. What would you give? What would you say? What do you want our audience to leave with? Starting with you, Darlene.
I would just say continue driving the change that you want to see. The ideas, the new innovation, the disruptive strategies that are in your heads, right? And we need those ideas to come out to the surface so that we can invest in them and see them grow and scale and change people's lives.
How about you, Reba?
Yeah, I think 3 things, and you've heard about them already. The first is when you're applying for a grant, if you're looking for dollars, know the strategy of the organization that you're applying to, and see if your work aligns to their strategic priorities. What you want is to find a partner whose mission and strategies and tactics are aligned to yours, because that's how we get there together. The second, I mentioned it already, employee engagement, employee engagement, employee engagement. Right now, with return to office, all corporations are looking for ways to engage their talent. So if you can offer a way to engage employees, board service volunteerism, that is a significant, significant plus. The third thing, and Darlene, you said it so beautifully, the data stories comment is we are motivated by data. All of us want to fund what's working, so share the data with us that makes you a compelling value proposition, and then share those stories, because that's where you get our hearts. So if you can get our heads and our hearts and our hands through employee engagement, I think that's my best advice to all of you.
Well, kudos to both of these ladies. Look, a lot of the money that we receive as nonprofit, community, and faith-based leaders around the country comes from people like them. They are real, they are down to earth, they are smart, they are giving, they have great hearts, and we appreciate both you, Darlene, appreciate you, Reba. Reba is supporting she's the one that's sponsoring Johnny Gill tonight, and then and then of course we have Darlene, who is sponsoring. She and Chuck and the Wells Fargo team, they are supporting the conference. Thank you, ladies, very much. Let's give them
Thank
both
you.
a hand.